some of the busiest roads across the metro area this Thanksgiving. Already, authorities seeing several fatalities. Georgia State Patrol says 8 people have died in crashes today alone. The latest one happening in Colquitt County. GSP says a Ram pickup truck crashed into a white Ford van. 5 of the 9 people inside the van died at the scene. The other 4 were taken to area hospitals. Now, new video tonight of police taking down an aggravated assault suspect in a Cobb County park after leading officers on a wild chase. It's just one of several intense police chases. Now, recently, another man, he's in jail tonight accused of crashing into cars to get away from police. They say DeMarco Tiller was driving a car with a stolen license plate on it, and technology picked up on it.
The Real-Time Crime Center has been successful in stopping hit-and-run drivers after they have fled. They would track them periodically from DOT cameras through intersections all the way up to flock cameras.
Yeah, right now Tiller's in jail facing several charges, including hit and run. Now tonight, a Jonesboro police officer says he's being retaliated against by the mayor. He tells Channel 2 he was placed on suspension after testifying in an investigation regarding allegations of wrongdoing by the mayor. Channel 2 investigative reporter Ashley Lincoln spoke with the officer and even got a response from the mayor.
So, well, fine, get out of here. You're suspended 2 days.
It's an unwarranted suspension. Jonesboro Police Sergeant Daryl Triplett says he's been placed on. Does this feel like clear retaliation to you?
It does. It feels like 100% retaliation.
Earlier this month, he says Mayor Danya Sauter placed him on suspension for testifying, a part of an investigation into allegation of misconduct by Mayor Sauter.
I haven't violated any oath of office. I haven't done anything illegal or against our policy and procedure. And still yet, I still stand suspended.
Channel 2 reported on the 47-page investigative report in October. Some of the allegations include the mayor having a gun in City Hall, using city resources for personal use, and soliciting campaign funds from city employees.
She's got the 47-page document, and she's going through it with a highlighter.
Triplett says Sauter questioned him about the testimony he gave in this report. Regarding allegations, Sauter solicited him personally for campaign funds.
I sent her not 1 but 4 email links where she solicited money for myself and my company.
I spoke with Mayor Sauter over the phone. She denies any retaliation against Triplett. She told me Triplett was initially placed on a 2-day suspension and later placed on administrative leave. She says his suspension is related to false statements Triplett allegedly made as a part of the administrative investigation.
When you have things that are not right, I think people should blow the whistle, and I think that's what keeps us all transparent and keep us above board.
Ashley Lincoln, WSB Tonight.
And it ended up being a beautiful Thanksgiving for us. I am tracking several chances for rain as we head into the rest of the weekend. I'll time it out for you coming up.
Plans to exchange Israeli hostages for Palestinian prisoners pushed back, but not for long, what negotiators say about the new timeline. Plus, a local nonprofit making sure everyone has a warm meal for Thanksgiving. We were there as Hosea helps prepare. Why some are thankful for this organization.
Closed captioning sponsored by Morgan & Morgan, America's largest injury law firm.
New stories break on Channel Action News. When things change, so does our coverage. Our team is always one step ahead, live in your neighborhoods.
We are working multiple sources to put this into perspective.
You're right behind me. Looking closer with unique angles.
Can you confirm that the school
Keeping you in touch with what's really important.
on an active search for a missing?
Channel 2 is your place to expect the unexpected. See what's new, live every day at 4, 5, and 6 on Channel 2 Action News.
Toyotathon is on. Time to make the holidays picture perfect with a new Toyota. We're going to need a bigger tree.
Lease a new 2024 Toyota Camry LE for $319 a month for 24 months, plus $500 holiday bonus cash. Toyota.
Traveling to Denver with her dog, Darling, for the holidays.
We're not going to the dog parks there. She just can't be interacting with dogs right now. I know it's extreme, but this is my baby.
The American Veterinary Medical Association says the risk of humans getting sick is low, but they suggest people wash their hands after coming into contact with dogs and to consult a veterinarian immediately if their dog is experiencing symptoms.
All anyone can do is really just keep the interaction to the minimum until more information comes out.
For CBS Mornings, I'm Elaine Quijano in New York.
The global effort to get goods to store shelves this holiday season could be slowed by a drought affecting the Panama Canal, one of the world's key shipping routes. The canal connects the Pacific and Atlantic Oceans, allowing ships to avoid sailing around the tip of South America. 40% of all U.S. container traffic passes through it. Senior national and environmental correspondent Ben Tracy shows us how a lack of rainfall has created a crisis at the canal.
The Panama Canal is one of the world's most successful shortcuts. About $270 billion of trade each year rides on this ribbon of water, leaving very little room for error.
Panama is the route.
Boris Moreno is the canal's vice president of operations.
I've never walked across the Panama Canal.
Yeah, it's an experience.
He says 2/3 of canal traffic is either coming from or going to the United States. But that flow of goods is now at risk because this 50-mile-long system of locks and lakes that connects two oceans is actually above sea level and doesn't run on ocean water.
No, it's fresh water. From our lake, Gatun Lake, that's man-made.
And so you are reliant on rainfall.
Yes.
And generally in Panama, that happens.
It's one of the wettest countries in the world. But this year has been an unprecedented dry season. Our lake levels are close to the minimum.
Severe drought is drying up the lakes that feed the canal, plunging water levels so low they've had to cut the number of vessels passing through from 36 to 20.
Hot Thanksgiving meals to 1,000 people. Hosea Helps has been serving up holiday meals in our community for more than 50 years, and this year is no different. Channel 2's Courtney Francisco is in Northeast Atlanta, where she spoke with all the volunteers that make everything come together.
It takes teamwork, strength, and passion. No more. No more. To feed a record-breaking number of people on Thanksgiving in Atlanta.
We had 1,000 people registered for a home-delivered meal in 2 hours when we opened our website, so we had to shut that down.
Elizabeth Omalami is president of Hosea Helps, a nonprofit that's been feeding families in need for 53 years here.
But the holidays is when the need is greatest. I went on a home delivery drive, and we went up into an apartment, and there were 4 children and a mother there. She had some white bread and bologna in her refrigerator, and that was it.
She said cost of living went up in 2023, making matters worse than before.
We're seeing the middle class asking for help. Whereas it used to be those that make $35,000 and less a year, now it's those that make $50,000, $60,000 a year.
This year, her team partnered with Chef Tim Morgan to make it happen. A man who's been there.
I know what it looked like to have absolutely nothing.
He was homeless in 2012, turned that around, and he's pulled all-nighters with fewer volunteers than past years to pay it forward.
It's just an unwavering commitment being able to help people who are vulnerable.
By 7 o'clock Thanksgiving morning, the meals were ready. Hosea Helps delivery drivers picked them up with the president.
I was so excited.
And took them to people in nursing homes, apartment complexes, and those who live on the streets.
We're coming. We're coming.
Courtney Francisco, WSB Tonight.
Well, Social Security checks will be a little bigger next year. Starting in January, payments will go up about 3% for retirees. That means an average increase of anywhere between $5,900 and $1,900. All right, the game ball for the Georgia Tech games being carried from Athens to Atlanta tomorrow. But before some clean old-fashioned hate on Saturday, the 23rd annual Run for the Kids will be held. It benefits Children's Healthcare of Atlanta. And a reminder, you can watch the big game right here on Channel 2 as the #1 Bulldogs try to beat their rival Yellow Jackets for the 6th year in a row. Kickoff is at 7:30. Now let's keep you ahead of what's happening next with our weather. Here's a live look over Midtown Atlanta. It's a little cloudy and chilly out there, but thankfully no rain at all. Now meteorologist Ashley Kramlich is live for you in Severe Weather Center 2. And Ashley, it's been chilly, but how's Friday looking with the weekend right ahead?
Friday, we may have a few sprinkles we're going to be contending with. Over the rest of the weekend, though, looks to be dry and then another chance for rain. So we're going to kind of see multiple chances for rain over the next several days. Not a washout by any means. And if you're heading out to the Georgia Tech game, it looks to be the best day of the weekend. Tomorrow, we're going to bring in some clouds, a lot more moisture that's going to lead to the potential for some sprinkles throughout the day. And then that front rolls in for our Saturday. It's going to kick up the winds, a little bit breezy on Saturday, but at least we're dry. That's all ahead of another system coming in on Sunday, bringing another chance of rain. Here's another live look over Midtown. Temperature currently here, we are down to 50 at the moment, but these numbers will continue to drop throughout the overnight hours. Despite the cloud cover, we're still going to be cold tomorrow morning, 43 here in Atlanta, a little bit warmer than where we were at today at 40. Our outlying spots, we could likely see a few 30s on the map as well. What I'm tracking for tomorrow, a big area of low pressure that's currently moving inland here from the Gulf of Mexico. That is going to be bringing us more clouds. It's also going to bring us more moisture in the air. Now, the air right now is very dry, so in order for us to see any showers out of this, it really has to overcome that dry air. So there's potential for some sprinkles early tomorrow morning. This is 2 a.m., potentially some passing light sprinkles between 8 to 10 a.m. in the morning. Otherwise, by the afternoon, we're back to the sunshine. It's actually going to be a pretty decent Friday for us. I still think you'll need the long sleeves. We'll make it up to the upper 50s by noon. Low 60s through the afternoon. Okay, let's time out the rest of the weekend. Cold front works its way in late Friday into early Saturday morning. No rain with this front, but bigger picture here, we're going to be watching an area of low pressure again developing over Texas. That's going to aim our way by Sunday. It looks to be late day Sunday that will likely see some scattered showers rolling in. Doesn't look like a ton of rain out of this. Overall, probably less than ½ an inch, and the timing is going to be for our Sunday evening. So your 5-day forecast of the weekend always in view. Temperatures are going to be staying with highs in the 50s this weekend. Morning lows will be dropping down to the 40s this weekend as well, and we'll stay pretty cool for next week.
Well, Atlanta police and city officials have a reminder for kids under the age of 18. Don't get caught outside after a certain hour without an adult. There are curfews in place throughout the week, midnight through 6 a.m. Friday and Saturday, and 11 p.m. to 6 a.m. Sunday through Thursday. Channel 2's Audrey Washington is live along the 17th Street Bridge in Midtown Atlanta, where city officials say the curfew will be strictly enforced.
We can't bring back Cameron and Zion.
It's hard to forget what happened on November 26, 2022. Here along the 17th Street Bridge is where bullets hit 6 people, including 12-year-old Zion Charles and 15-year-old Cameron Jackson. Both Charles and Jackson died. The teen suspects all in custody. At least 3 have taken plea deals. Jackson's mother told us last month that this upcoming commemoration of her son's death will be hard for her.
The mother in me that'll never see her child again.
Since the shooting, several city officials, particularly council member Keisha Waits, worked to make the city's curfew stricter and more enforceable.
Lean forward and ensure that law enforcement has the tools that are necessary.
Wednesday, the Atlanta Police Department put out a reminder about the curfew. As it stands, the city's curfew is in place for children under the age of 18 years old from 11 p.m. to 6 a.m. on Sunday through Thursday, and from midnight to 6 a.m. on Friday and Saturday. Reverend Darrell Winston led a nonviolence peace walk shortly after the shooting.
Any group that you're associated with that will put you in a position where your life is placed in jeopardy, please, by all means, stay clear of that group.
I'm Audrey Washington, WSB Tonight.
A small setback for ceasefire plans between Israel and Hamas as families of hostages wait for word about who will be released. And no action on Wall Street today. Trading was closed in observance of the Thanksgiving holiday.
Fear becoming victims of crime. A near record 40% say they're afraid to walk alone at night within a mile of their home. 50% fear getting their car stolen, and 17% avoid going to the mall.
Okay, they're getting ready to breach.
So authorities are carrying out raids like this one, arresting suspected shoplifters allegedly involved in an organized theft ring that's targeting stores throughout California. Even in posh Beverly Hills, officials say they're determined to keep shoppers safe.
I hear the drone. There it is, above the palm tree.
Yeah, Hawkeye.
Police drones are now in the air 14 hours a day after this brazen attack on a jewelry store last year. Officers are also monitoring 2,500 security cameras.
We've created this real-time watch center where all of the city cameras can be watched in a single place.
Is it working? Is it bringing crime down?
It is.
Is it making people feel safer?
I think so.
If we don't do something soon, for our stores are going to be out of business.
Aaron Jones provides armed guards to businesses. He says the number of requests has tripled since 2020.
They realize that they have to do something to protect people.
For CBS Mornings, I'm Carter Evans in Los Angeles.
We turn now to Israel and its deal with Hamas that will see some hostages released. At least 50 will be freed during a 4-day ceasefire. Israel says the pause could last longer if more hostages are released. In exchange, Hamas says 150 Palestinian women and children will be let go from Israeli prisons beginning as early as Friday. CBS News senior foreign correspondent Holly Williams has the latest from Tel Aviv.
Tonight, Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu vowed to bring home all of the hostages, calling it a sacred mission. Under the deal, Hamas is incentivized to release more of its captives. Every 10 extra hostages freed will extend the temporary ceasefire by a day. In Gaza, some residents told CBS News a 4-day pause in fighting isn't enough. We're exhausted, said this girl. We want a permanent truce. We want peace, said this young man. We've had enough. In Israel, the families of the hostages have endured anxiety and heartbreak for more than 6 weeks. But with hope on the horizon, today a group of their supporters sang songs of peace in central Tel Aviv.
My life is end in the moment my family was broken.
Hadass Calderon's 16-year-old daughter Sahar and 12-year-old son Erez were taken hostage from kibbutz Nir Oz. This video shows Hamas militants attacking the small farming community and taking Erez when they left.
What do you think Sahar and Erez?
Pause in Israel's war against Hamas, and the first release of hostages is just a few hours away. There were hopes it would happen yesterday, but Israel said they were still negotiating. Today, Qatar, which has been mediating, said the 4-day pause will begin tomorrow morning. The temporary ceasefire in Gaza is scheduled for Friday morning at 7 o'clock local time. Then the first hostages will be released later that afternoon. Now, under the terms of the deal, 50 hostages held captive in Gaza, women and children, are to be released. In exchange, Israel will free at least 150 Palestinian prisoners, all women and minors. Now, the deal reached Wednesday morning was mediated by Qatar, Egypt, and the U.S. Senior administration officials say President Biden has been very hands-on in the hostage negotiations, urging the emir of Qatar to press Hamas to accept this deal and urging Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to do the same. During the pause in the conflict, Israel has agreed to allow hundreds of trucks of much-needed humanitarian relief, medical aid, and fuel into the Gaza Strip. This 22-year-old student in Gaza says that aid is desperately needed.
About the food, we really eat one meal every single day because the source of food really very expensive right now, and it is not everywhere. I mean, the food.
Israel's government says it's received an initial list of names to be released and has notified families. The first 13 hostages are to be handed over on Friday, then at least 10 more on each day of the ceasefire. Israel is signaling that ceasefire could be extended up to 6 days more if Hamas frees more hostages. And we know 3 Americans are reportedly on the list, including 3-year-old Abigail Moridan, whose birthday is this Friday. Now, it turns out the day after Thanksgiving is the busiest day of the year for plumbers. I love this story. Plumbers say they see a lot of grease go down the drains, stuffed garbage disposals, more bathroom use, and other plumbing problems. Their biggest advice: don't put potato or banana peels down the garbage disposal. Also, don't use drain cleaning chemicals because they only work to a certain extent and could injure plumbers as they try to snake clog drains. Good advice there. Well, an exciting night for one Atlanta Hawks fan at last night's game. That's tonight in This Together. And Here are tonight's Jumbo Bucks Lotto winning.
Spokesperson John Kirby earlier today, and here's what he said in terms of the next phase of how this is going to go.
Well, our focus right now that the deal is inked, is implementation and execution of it, and we're going to be watching very closely to make sure all sides comport with their agreements. Hamas, as a terrorist organization, has been known not to always do that, so we're going to be watching that very, very closely. And that's where our heads are now. But as I said earlier, we want to get all the hostages released, and so we're going to continue to work with our partners in the region to see what can be done after the execution of this deal to get more people out.
And as Holly mentioned, this deal really incentivizes Hamas to release more hostages. If they release more hostages, essentially the timeline in terms of that ceasefire or humanitarian pause will be prolonged. And Kirby also mentioned at least 2 women and 1 toddler who are Americans who remain in Hamas custody that the United States wants to bring back home on top of all of those other hostages as well. So the United States will be watching this closely, and we'll make sure to bring you updates when we have them. Meg?
Thank you, Willie Inman. Thank you so much.
Jameson, a famously smooth whiskey from a famously big family. So big that Jose here could be one of us. You see, he's nearly as smooth as our whiskey. For him, wrong turns usually turn out all right. Even when he shows up uninvited, he's never empty-handed. And he only ever drinks smooth Jameson whiskey. Surely he must be part of the family. Must be a Jameson.
This is Tina. Tina's not what you'd call a sound sleeper. So Tina's husband...
ends November 3rd.
Are in this together tonight. One lucky Atlanta Hawks fan has a new car to be thankful for.
And she has it! Congratulations, Lori!
Yeah, Atlanta area BMW centers raffled off the car to wrap up a fundraising campaign for the Ronald McDonald Foundation after raising more than $3 million. That's a win-win for everyone. 3 finalists in the raffle got keys during a timeout in the game, but only one opened the car. That was a nail-biter, and the game was too. The Hawks beat the Nets by 2 points in OT last night. Wow, that's awesome. Well, we'll see you again tomorrow for Channel 2 Action News this morning. Starting at 4:30, Jimmy Kimmel Live is next, followed by Nightline. We hope everybody has a happy Thanksgiving.
From Netflix's newest animated musical comedy starring the one, the only Adam Sandler.
Now streaming on Netflix and making his parade debut today, Leo is the class pet you will never forget.
Oh my goodness, it's spreading.
This morning, authorities are investigating a major scare at the U.S.-Canadian border, where surveillance cameras captured a speeding white car go airborne before crashing into a checkpoint structure at the Rainbow Bridge and exploding in a fireball, according to law enforcement. The fiery crash in western New York, leaving witnesses stunned.
He was flying over 100 miles an hour.
The incident killed 2 people inside the car, according to law enforcement, and caused a cascade of security concerns, briefly pausing international flights at the Buffalo airport and closing several border crossings on one of the busiest travel days of the year. But overnight, the FBI turned the investigation over to local police as a traffic investigation, citing no explosive materials or terrorism links.
There is no evidence at this time that this was a terrorist activity. And that's what I want to make very clear to the public.
Still, the explosion rattling some, with the country under a heightened alert amid ongoing violence in the Middle East. But officials are reassuring visitors set to attend New York City's Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade.
The NYPD and partners have already enhanced security.
The NYPD will be out in full force along the entire 2.5-mile parade route.
It's one of my favorite times of the year.
Crowds lining the streets Wednesday to get an up-close and early glimpse of the magic, including the inflation of the stars of the show, 16 towering character balloons.
While Bluey is being inflated, little kiddos were going, Bluey, 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 and that's fun.
We have more parade than ever before. 3.5 hours of nonstop entertainment, spectacle.
New York isn't the only place ramping up security for the holiday. Cities like Houston, Chicago, and Detroit are keeping a watchful eye on massive Thanksgiving parades of their own. Back in New York, the mayor with this message.
We will do our job. Your job is to have as much fun as possible.
Federal and local law enforcement have been preparing for this event all year. Officers will be out in full force, both seen and unseen. Now, what will be on full display? The 7 new balloons taking flight, including a 5-story Pillsbury Doughboy and Po from Kung Fu Panda. I'll be among the millions of excited onlookers. Guys, this is my first time getting to see the parade in person.
Oh, cool. You're going to love it. It's not the Taylor Swift Eras concert. It's better, Emily. You're going to...
Well, Craig, a senior U.S. official tells NBC News the two sides are still negotiating the final logistics of that hostage handover. But we do expect to see those women and children passed from Hamas to the Red Cross, then to Israel's military. And Israel's prime minister is saying the Red Cross, for the first time, is going to get access to those hostages who are still remaining in captivity. Craig.
All right. We certainly hope so, Raf. Happy Thanksgiving to you. Stay safe, my friend. Thank you.
With tens of millions of Americans on the move for Thanksgiving, traffic jams, airport lines, and packed rest stops are testing travelers' patience.
This is the biggest I've ever seen in 20 years of travel.
In the Northeast, many anxious families watched the wicked weather and their flight connections.
We're hoping we get out tonight, but we'll see.
More than 55 million Americans are expected to travel at least 50 miles from home over the holiday, according to AAA.
It's just a lot of people, a lot of it's just chaos.
In cities like New York, Los Angeles, and Charlotte, just getting to the airport was half the battle.
We literally took an hour to go a quarter of a mile.
It's been busy, I'm telling you. It's been like 3 or 4 wrecks.
But there's good news too, less pain at the pump, with drivers paying 35 cents per gallon less than last year.
Last call for Amtrak Northeast.
For a lower stress option, Amtrak says ride its rails. The record-setting travel all leading up to Sunday, which the TSA says could be the busiest day this week, with nearly 3 million passengers at airports nationwide.
I'm thinking I'm not going to make it back Sunday night, probably.
Longtime travelers say a positive outlook can go a long way.
I just see, hey, we're all here for the same thing, and I just wish us all safe travel.
That's a good attitude to have. And by the way, this is always good news on a holiday. Yesterday, we had just a few thousand delays nationwide and under 100 cancellations. That being said, we called this the eye of the travel storm, right? But AAA still warns if you're hitting the road, even today on the holiday, the roads still can get pretty packed, and they recommend driving before 10 or after 5, as long as that doesn't put you at risk of missing the big meal. Chanel.
All right, good advice. Maggie, thank you.
And now let's get that full forecast. Mr. Roker is uptown on the Macy's parade route once again. Happy Thanksgiving, buddy.
Hey, happy Thanksgiving, Craig and Chanel, and happy Thanksgiving to you. Hopefully you are already where you need to be, but boy, what a gorgeous day here in the Northeast. Let's show you what we're looking at as far as your Thanksgiving forecast. We start off with today. Again, gorgeous day today, and then tomorrow, blustery and cold in the Northeast, Great Lakes, plenty of sunshine, a few showers down in Florida, some storms, some snow in the Rockies, sunny out west. Now we move on into Saturday, again, sunny for the eastern half of the country, snowy and cold making its way out of the Rockies, but sunshine in the western third of the country. And if you are traveling on Sunday, that is going to be the busiest travel day yet. We are looking at some light snow through the Great Lakes, showers developing down through the Mississippi River Valley, cold out in the Rockies. Airport-wise, well, here's what we're going to be looking at. Basically, it's going to be chance of some delays in Boston, New York, Philly, D.C. look good. Detroit, Chicago, St. Louis, maybe a little delay. Same for Dallas and Houston. And out west, all those airports are looking fine.
It's here. Black Friday week is live at Target.
Has been arrested and charged with harassment and stalking. It comes after a series of videos have surfaced showing Stuart Seldowitz making anti-Islamic comments to a New York City food cart vendor.
If we killed 4,000 Palestinian kids, you know what? It wasn't enough. It wasn't enough.
Go.
Why should I go? It's a free country. It's not Egypt here.
In another clip, Seldowitz called the vendor a terrorist and
this is really heartbreaking. You know, Hamas could release the hostages now. It could have released them yesterday. It could have released them on October 7th. And every moment that it chooses not to release those vulnerable little children is a moment that it continues to psychologically terrorize these children's families. You know, we're hoping that at least tomorrow we can start to bring to an end the nightmare of some of these most vulnerable hostages, the over 30 children Hamas has been holding incommunicado. They've been holding them in the dark, and they've been keeping their families in the dark. Their families know nothing about their condition, physically, mentally, emotionally. You know, maybe even worse, these children don't know what has happened to their families, what happened to them on October 7th. This is little Abigail. She's 3. She was orphaned. Does this little girl who's been held in a tunnel for 50 days know she's an orphan? What does it mean for a 3-year-old girl to know that she's an orphan? This hostage crisis is intensely personal for everyone in Israel. We're a small country. Everyone knows someone who has had someone stolen from them. And we're hoping to begin bringing back our stolen children, bring back those hostages. And we're committed to the pledge that we will bring all of them back and there will be no one left behind.
What caused the delay?
It appears that Hamas is determined to psychologically terrorize us. Hamas could have released these hostages long ago. It didn't have to take them hostage in the first place. You know, these children have
I
the most horrific circumstances.
What caused the delay? Why are we not seeing them today? What's caused the delay?
At the moment, the talks are ongoing, and this is a very sensitive situation, so I have to be careful what I say. And I hope that we can begin to release the first batch tomorrow and get them out of the Hamas-held dungeons that they've been held in.
Suggestion is that Hamas didn't sign the paperwork. Is it as simple as that?
Look, this is a terrorist organization. It's not exactly an organization whose word is a law or writ, and we need its signature on paper. But again, Hamas can decide whenever it wants to release all 240 of those hostages, the children and the elderly, the men and the women, the soldiers and the civilians. It is for Hamas to decide it can release them, and we will continue putting military pressure on Hamas so that it releases all of our hostages and we bring all of them home and leave no one left behind.
Why are you confident that the hostages, the children, will be released by tomorrow morning?
We are hopeful. We are continuing to apply military pressure on Hamas to release all of our hostages. It hasn't suddenly developed a conscience. It hasn't suddenly developed a sense of morality. The terrorists who burned, butchered, and beheaded people on October 7th haven't suddenly realized it's evil to hold a 2-year-old girl hostage.
So you're hopeful but not
in a tunnel.
confident?
We are hopeful.
Okay, but not confident at this stage. You say that you're hopeful that all of the hostages will be released eventually by Hamas. What happens then in Gaza?
We will continue with our campaign to destroy Hamas in response to the October 7th massacre. This is the terror group that on October 7th abducted little children from their beds. And if we leave them in power, it will do it again. Because Hamas has told us it wants to perpetrate another and another and another October 7th massacre. And this war has to end with the end of Hamas. Because if we leave it free, we will leave it emboldened. And we will be in this same story in 6 months' time when Hamas attacks us again.
Okay.
So we're fighting to bring back our stolen children and to make sure that the terrorists of October 7th can never steal them again.
Mr. Levy, you say that once the hostages are all released, you are basically going to pound Hamas into to obliterate them. So what is their incentive to release all the hostages?
At the moment, Hamas is coming under unrelenting military pressure, and we've had it begging for a breather because it's getting clobbered. After the first 50 hostages are released, Hamas will have a decision to make. For every 10 additional hostages it releases, we are willing to agree to another one-day pause in the fighting. And if Hamas wants that time for another breather, they can release those hostages, and we'll continue putting pressure on Hamas until we get everyone home. We are committed. That is our obligation as a state. It goes to the deepest values of the Jewish people, releasing people from captivity. We're determined to bring them all home. We won't leave any of them behind.
I was speaking to a hostage negotiator this morning. He made the comparison between the 50 hostages that Hamas has promised to release, as opposed to the 150 prisoners that are Palestinians that Israel has said that it will release. And he made the comparison between the numbers and the fact that does Israel not think that Palestinian lives are valued as highly as Israeli lives?
That is an astonishing accusation. If we could release one prisoner for every one hostage, we would obviously do that. We're operating in horrific circumstances. We're not choosing to release these prisoners who have blood on their hands. We are talking about people who have been convicted of stabbing and shooting attacks. Notice the question of proportionality doesn't interest Palestinian supporters when they are able to get more of their prisoners out. But really, it is outrageous to suggest that the fact that we are willing to release prisoners who are convicted of terrorism offenses, more of them than we are getting our own innocent children back, somehow suggests that we don't care about Palestinian lives. Really, that's a disgusting accusation.
Will President Netanyahu's political career survive this war?
The Prime Minister has been very clear. People are right to ask very difficult questions. And when this war is over, everyone is going to have to give the Israeli public answers. Everyone will be held accountable. Everyone is going to have to take responsibility. And after this war is over, after we win, after we destroy Hamas, we can open everything up. And he will give the Israeli people those answers. And we will interrogate and understand exactly how this happened and how we can make sure this never happens again.
Okay, I'm not sure if I said President Netanyahu then. If I did, my apologies.
Prime Minister.
He is the Prime Minister, of course, at the moment. For how much longer, we don't know at this stage. What about aid? What are we going to do about aid? We're talking to the International Red Cross in just a few moments' time. We need to get aid into Gaza.
Absolutely. It's very important that humanitarian aid reach the people of Gaza who need it and to make sure that Hamas can't steal it. Our position has been very consistent from the beginning. We want as much food, water, medicine, and shelter going to the people of Gaza in a way that makes sure Hamas can't exploit those trucks in order to rearm and refuel. We've more than doubled our capabilities to inspect those trucks to make sure Hamas isn't exploiting them to smuggle in weapons. We know there have been logistical constraints on the part part of the international agencies in Gaza that are supposed to receive that aid. But our position from the very beginning is we want to see that aid reach the people of Gaza, as much of it as possible, and we're ready to inspect that aid and facilitate that.
Okay, we must leave it there. I hope that we might be able to speak again tomorrow with better news for those little ones that have been held, as you said,
Let's pray. Thank you, Kate.
for 50 days. Thank you.
It's the annual enrollment period for Medicare Advantage plans, and you have a choice, which is why Anthem Blue Cross and Blue Shield is here to help you get all the benefits you qualify for. Give us a call today at 833-585-5122 for a plan review with a licensed agent. We'll help you make the most of your budget. Ask about our $0 monthly premium plans that include dental, vision, and hearing, along with transportation, a gym membership, and $0 copays for prescriptions. We also have plans to help you pay for groceries, over-the-counter health items, and utilities like cell phone, all on a single prepaid MasterCard. Call Anthem Blue Cross and Blue Shield at 833-585-5122 for your Medicare Advantage plan review. Find a plan with all the benefits you're eligible for. We're here to help, so you never go it alone. That's our anthem.
Our mission is local and global. We are constantly developing newer therapies for rare pediatric cancer, and we share our information globally, and that's the hallmark of St. Jude.
This is Tina. Tina's not what you'd call a sound sleeper, so Tina's husband, Tim, wants a new mattress. Haverty's wide selection of top brand mattresses and knowledgeable associates mean they can find a mattress that's right for them. We're there to help, but only if Tina and Tim want our help. And right now, save up to $500 on Tempur-Pedic adjustable mattress sets, plus 0% interest. So Tina and Tim walk away even happier. And when Tina and Tim are happy, we're happy.
At DriveTime.com, we've been hard at work. And we finally did it.
Did you make it so I can finally see my real payments and shop for thousands of cars with no hit to my credit?
Wait. Yes!
Shop for cars online with no credit hit.
Look, there's a slidey thingy. I'm changing my own payments. I feel strong!
Go to DriveTime.com, get approved, shop real cars, customize your real terms with no credit hit.
Finally! We did it, Drive Time!
Shop for cars online with no credit hit at DriveTime.com.
And again, everybody, you're watching The Breakfast Show here on Sky News. About this time, we were expecting to talk about children being released by Hamas. That has not happened. Meantime, we're also hearing that about 200 people, according to the Palestinian authorities, have died overnight in Gaza. Let's get a Palestinian perspective on the situation. Mustafa Barghouti is with us now. Hello to you. Thank you for joining us on the programme this morning. Your thoughts on the good morning. Your thoughts on the situation overnight. I know that you're speaking to us from Ramallah on the occupied West Bank.
I think it's very important to fix the terminology first. The 200 people who died in Gaza did not just die. They were killed by Israeli bombardment. And we just received the news that the Israeli army have arrested the director of the Shifa hospital, as well as many of the medical doctors there, and are interrogating them. The unfortunate thing is that the Israeli attacks on Gaza continue. So far, we have 14,732 people killed, including no less than 6,000 children and 4,000 women. The tragedy is that there are about 7,000 people missing, mostly under the rubble, and half of them probably are Palestinian children, which would bring the total number of Palestinian children killed to almost 9,000. That is, of course, unacceptable and unprecedented. There has been a ceasefire deal, which should be initiated. I think the Israelis have delayed it so far, but it has to go into effect very soon, and it would include complete ceasefire for 4 days, during which time 50 Israeli children and women will be returned home safely in exchange for releasing 150 Palestinian children and women who are in Israeli jails. And this could be beginning of series of ceasefires, which I think is very much needed. I think continuing this war is absolutely unacceptable and represents a very terrible war crime because it means just genocide. This war has to stop and a ceasefire has to be established, during which time I think all prisoners could be exchanged and everybody can go home safely. And maybe, hopefully, the world community will put its efforts in initiating a true peace process to end this terrible situation and end the Israeli occupation, which has been the cause of all problems.
So much to unpick there. Where should we start? The fact that I'm sure Israel would say so many people are dying in Gaza because Hamas chooses to hide themselves away, a terrorist organisation, according to the British government and others, chooses to hide itself away in areas that are highly populated.
This is another lie by Israel, which is unfortunately adopted by most newsrooms in Europe. And I feel very, very sorry about that, because I think your newsrooms should be more objective and should verify information before broadcasting them. But anyhow, this is not true, because we've seen.
Mustafa, which bit are you unhappy about? Because we have seen the tunnels.
What you just told me that Hamas. What you just said. What you just said. You repeated lies after lies after lies. One lie was that Palestinians decapitated heads of children.
I didn't say that.
CNN. No, I'm not saying you. I'm saying in general. I'm saying in general.
You just said lies that I repeated.
The CNN. I didn't say you said that. I said newsrooms in general repeated many Israeli lies, including now the lie that Hamas is hiding among civilians. What we've seen yesterday on several broadcasts by different stations, that Hamas fighters are attacking the tanks. They're not hiding among the civilian population. And to keep repeating that claim to justify the killing of 9,000 Palestinian children is unacceptable. I don't accept the fact that 32 Israeli children were killed on the 7th of October. No civilian should be killed. But to say that it is non-acceptable to kill 32 Israeli children, but it is acceptable to kill 9,000 Palestinian children, and to claim that Palestinians are responsible for killing themselves is totally out of line. There were many lies told, including about hospitals. The other day, the Prime Minister of Israel, ex-Prime Minister Ehud Barak, said he was responsible, his government was responsible for building basements that Israel is claiming now are tunnels in the Shifa hospital, when Israel was in charge of Gaza Strip. So in my opinion, the newsrooms have to revise their approach and be more objective, not just repeat what Israeli narrative is telling them.
You've seen the images released by the Israeli Defense Force of the tunnels underneath the hospital with some armory. What do you think is going on there?
Fabrication. It's also fabrications. New York Times, CNN, Washington Post, all reported, and BBC reported that this information was unconvincing. That's exactly what they told. Because why did they take so many days to produce these results? Why didn't they show everybody the tunnels from the very first day when they occupied the hospital? The reality is that Israel is attacking all hospitals in the north of Gaza and the center of Gaza. They've already destroyed all the hospitals. They've already suspended the work of 26 hospitals out of 36 in Gaza, because their real goal is ethnic cleansing of the people of the north of Gaza and Gaza City. Their goal is to ethnically cleanse this area completely through bombardment, through airstrikes, through artillery, to force people out and then occupy this area and not allow Palestinians to come back to it. This is another act of atrocity against a whole civilian population, pushing 2.3 million people to be clustered in an area that does not exceed 70 square miles in the south of Gaza. And that is very dangerous. But it also reflects what Netanyahu himself declared, and his government, and the spokesperson of his army, They are dreaming about the possibility of ethnic cleansing of all of Gaza Strip into
Mustafa,
Egypt.
I'm so sorry. Because we got to you a little bit late, we're going to have to leave it there. We're about to go off air. But please come back and talk to us again. I want to explore that with you.
Yeah, anytime.
Thank you very
And
much.
thank you for
Thank
the
you.
opportunity to speak.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Israeli officials say that long-awaited deal brokered with Hamas for a brief pause in fighting, allowing 50 hostages out of Gaza, likely won't happen until tomorrow at the earliest.
No reason has been given for the delay, but the families who have been in agony, wondering and waiting since October 7th are still waiting. Officials say talks are continuing. Once the deal is done, we've learned the hostages are likely to be released in small clusters to the International Red Cross. In return, Israel will pause its fighting for 4 days and release 150 Palestinian prisoners, many of them women and children. Israel will also allow up to 300 trucks of aid and fuel into Gaza each day.
Until then, though, the strikes on Gaza continue. The IDF says its forces have destroyed 400 Hamas tunnels since the start of the war as fighting continues in the Gaza Strip. The Palestinian news agency Wafa says more than 100 people were killed overnight, including 50 from one family.
Thanks to new Sun Butter and Jelly-filled jammies, we're making the world a friendlier place. That's because jammies are crustless, nutless, and scrumptious. So they're school-friendly, work-friendly, toast-friendly, coat-friendly.
On hold. Attacks continued this morning after an Israeli official said the first exchange of hostages for prisoners will not happen before tomorrow. Hamas has said it will free 50 hostages in exchange for 150 prisoners in Israeli jails. Our correspondents in the region are gathering reaction from both sides. We begin with Holly Williams in Tel Aviv. Holly, good morning.
Good morning, Vlad. Around 10 U.S. citizens are still unaccounted for following the October.
Well, hello and welcome to our viewers joining us from all around the world. I'm Becky Anderson in Doha in Qatar. And breaking news as we come on the air, a 4-day truce between Israel and Hamas is set to take effect at this hour. Nearly 7 weeks of punishing air and ground campaigns to root out the militant group now on hold. This is part of a deal to secure the release of Israeli hostages captured in the October 7th terror attack. According to Qatar, which helped broker the deal, the first hostages are expected to be released at 4 p.m. local time, about 9 hours from now. Women and children, some from the same families, will be turned over to the Red Cross. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says that the deal is not without its challenges, and the Israeli military warning there could be changes at any moment. Well, Israel's military operation, of course, prompted by the Hamas terror attacks back in October that killed around 1,200 Israelis and foreign nationals. Well, it could take some time before we know just how successful this pause in fighting will be. Qatar's foreign ministry spokesperson says the aim is for a lasting truce that would extend beyond 4 days and lead to negotiations to end the violence. The Israeli government said earlier this week an extra day could be added to the pause in fighting for every 10 additional hostages released. Well, meanwhile, the Israeli military kept up the bombardment of Gaza in the hours leading up to the truce. CNN crews witnessed explosions across the border from their vantage point in southern Israel. And Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant said the military campaign could go, quote, forcefully for at least 2 months more after this pause. Well, I asked Qatar's foreign ministry spokesperson, of course, Qatar has mediated these talks, this negotiation. I asked Majid Al-Ansari what would constitute a breach of this truce. This is what he told me.
I don't think I can get into the technicalities, tactically on the ground. Of course, this is to be handled by the, people who are there on the ground. But what I can tell you is that the agreement is about full cessation of hostilities within the 4 days. So obviously, any resumption of hostilities of any kind would be a breach. And I think it's very important that lines of communication remain open, so that any possible breach, however it is defined, is communicated immediately to both sides, and there is a way to walk back from it and make sure that we continue with it.
Well, let's bring in CNN's Jeremy Diamond live at this hour in Sderot in Israel. And it is at this hour, Jeremy, that the guns are expected to go silent. What can you see and hear at this point?
Well, Becky, just as you were coming to me, I just heard another loud boom. We are still hearing what sounds like artillery. These are the kinds of sounds that we have been hearing throughout this war, and we are still hearing them with less frequency. But up until 7 a.m., we were hearing a very, very steady drumbeat of small arms fire, artillery fire, perhaps even tank fire as well. When the clock struck 7, those sounds did not stop altogether, and I am still hearing some booms in the distance coming from inside the Gaza Strip. You can even see behind me here that there is some smoke in the distance, and you're still hearing those booms. I don't know if you can hear them through my microphone, Becky, but it is remarkable. I mean, we are 4 minutes now into what was supposed to be the beginning of this truce between Israel and Hamas, and the fighting doesn't seem to have stopped altogether. And so that raises enormous questions, obviously, about whether or not this truce between Israel and Hamas will indeed go forward. Is this just errant fire that is going to be accepted or disregarded by one or the other side? Big questions, especially as the lives of these hostages, the possibility of them to get out of Gaza, to come back to their families, rests on this question of whether Israel and Hamas are able to respect this truce.
4 minutes in, you hear the sound of fire, some booms at least. I had asked the spokesperson for the Qatar Foreign Ministry, who was talking about the deal just yesterday, what a breach would look or sound like. And he said, this is about stopping the hostilities on the ground completely. That is not, from your vantage point, what is happening as we speak.
That's right. Just as you were speaking, Becky, another loud boom in the distance. I'm trying to see if there's any impacts from that, any particular smoke. But we are hearing the sounds of war. And we're not supposed to be hearing the sounds of war after 7 a.m. local time. So again, it raises enormous questions about the viability of this truce. Again, we want to be super cautious about attributing the sounds of the fire, but in my mind, the sounds that I'm hearing sound very much like the artillery fire that we have been hearing constantly for weeks and weeks now.
And as you are speaking, we've brought up the live pictures over Gaza, Jeremy, and there is smoke billowing over a certain area of Gaza City at present. I'm going to bring you back in momentarily, Jeremy. Jeremy Diamond is in Sderot in Israel for the time being. Thank you. Here's what we know about the deal then to exchange hostages and prisoners. An Israeli official says a total of 39 Palestinian prisoners will be released on Friday, but not until a group of 13 women and children, hostages from Gaza, are back in Israeli hands. The Israeli government has notified the families of the first group of hostages set to be released on Friday. And the US says it will contact families of Americans released after it has confirmation that they are departing Gaza. Well, among the 10 Americans being held in Gaza is 3-year-old Abigail Eden. US President Joe Biden said on Thursday that he has his fingers crossed that this little girl will be released. Qatar says it will be receiving a list of hostages to be freed on a day-by-day basis, in a day-by-day process. Israel will also, well, this is the schedule at least, this is the plan. Israel expected to hand over a list of Palestinian prisoners expected to be released. Here's the founder of the Hostage Families Forum in New York speaking on Thursday.
I think that every soul that we will manage to bring back, Judaism would say that every person is a whole world. So every person that we can get out of there, it's amazing, and it's good. It's the good news that we are waiting for a long 6 weeks, that we have only bad news and only hard times. But we still remember and understand that the struggle is long. We will have to help the ones who will come back, and we'll see them come back to recover and return to a normal life as much as possible. And we will have to keep fighting for the rest of them, because Hamas is not planning on opening the gates and let people just go. And it doesn't matter if they are Israelis or American or Canadians or Thais, it doesn't matter. They took innocent people. They took innocent people from their houses in a vicious attack. And we are highly devoted to bring each and every one of them home.
Well, that scheduled release for the first 13 hostages is 4 p.m. this afternoon. It is 7 a.m. on the ground at this point. So there's some hours between now, when the fighting was supposed to stop, and the scheduled release of those first hostages. This is a war zone. Don't expect things to necessarily go by the book. Well, the UN anticipates that trucks carrying desperately needed humanitarian aid will move into Gaza immediately once this truce begins. Well, dozens of trucks lined up on the Egyptian side of the Rafah border crossing on Thursday ahead of the expected truce. The UN is sending food, water, fuel and everyday items. Meanwhile, the International Rescue Committee welcomed the pause in fighting, but says the agreed upon 4 days, not enough time to address, quote, catastrophic levels of humanitarian need. Let's get you to Jerusalem. Shaina Lowe, who is communication advisor for the Norwegian Refugee Council, standing by. Let's start, Shona, with what we know at present. This truce was expected to go into effect at the top of this hour. And while I was talking to my colleague on the Israel-Gaza border. It was clear you could still hear the sounds of war behind him, and we witnessed smoke rising over Gaza. That suggests that there is still activity on the ground. You must be, as so many people will be, hoping that this truce does hold, that what we are seeing on the ground there is not a breach of this pause, this humanitarian pause. Explain why that is, why it is so important that this works at this point.
It's been almost 7 weeks of hostilities in Gaza. A huge portion of the Gaza Strip is just leveled. At least 60% of buildings are damaged or destroyed. We have 1.7 million internally displaced people. The humanitarian needs are so vast, and we and our colleagues in Gaza and our partner organizations that we work with have been desperate to be able to scale up our responses, which have been limited due to the goods available inside of Gaza and the ongoing hostilities. So this pause in the fighting, we are planning and will take advantage of, and we desperately are pushing that this pause be extended and build up to a long-term sustainable ceasefire. It's so easy to destroy things, and to build things back up is going to take so much longer than it took to destroy them. We now have 7 weeks of hostilities that we need to address the results of.
Let's just be quite clear, for those who may just be joining us, this truce was supposed to go into effect in the Gaza Strip at 7 a.m. It is 7:12 a.m. at present, and there is evidence there of some lingering activity. I have to say that was just after the top of the hour that we saw that, and it does, at least from this viewpoint, look as if it may have stopped, but we'll keep you on this picture as we talk to Shayna Lowe from the Norwegian Refugee Council. You said this humanitarian pause is an opportunity, a window of opportunity. How will your organization take advantage of it?
Well, over the last 7 weeks, we've already been providing cash assistance to vulnerable families and managing a handful of sites for internally displaced people that are not UNRWA facilities. We have been providing those people with food, making sure that other needs are accommodated, getting them hygiene kits. We have plans to increase that amount of assistance to be able to access areas that previously were unsafe, and to do all that we can to reach communities in need. One of the challenges is that it's unclear as of yet which goods will be coming in which order. So we're going to have to be a bit limber and flexible in our response, not knowing when the 10 trucks worth of goods that we have waiting in Egypt will be able to make it through, and when we'll be able to distribute those. But we will search for whatever we can inside of Gaza to provide for needs, continue to provide hot meals, and continue to try and address some of the just vast, enormous humanitarian needs.
Shayna, we know that included in the humanitarian supplies will be fuel. That fuel is destined for humanitarian infrastructure, schools, hospitals, to run sewage plants, to ensure that the infrastructure for those who need it most is functioning. How important and significant is that part of the deal? The concession by Israel to allow fuel into the Gaza Strip in what is likely to be much more significant amounts than has been to date?
Well, fuel is desperately needed to address and care for all aspects of life in Gaza. There's been no electricity in Gaza for over a month at this point, so everything is reliant on generators. We ourselves can't even execute a humanitarian response without fuel to run our cars and be able to move across Gaza. Fuel is needed for hospitals, water sanitation facilities, desalination, and wastewater treatment. Fuel is desperately needed, and it's important to note that Israel remains the occupying power in Gaza and has remained the occupying power since 1967. And as a result of being the occupying power, Israel has obligations to care for the well-being and provide for the basic needs for survival for Palestinians in Gaza. They should, throughout all of these 7 weeks, been, if not providing those goods and needs themselves, then allowing humanitarians unfettered access without undue interference so that we could address those needs. We are desperate to scale up this aid. We need to be able to scale up this aid, and under international law, Israel shouldn't be prohibiting that.
Shana, we thank you for joining us from Jerusalem, where the time is 7:16 in the morning. We are 16 minutes into what has been organized as a humanitarian pause. This is a 4-day period, a lull in the fighting, an opportunity to get that much needed humanitarian aid into the near 2 million or so people who need it in the Gaza Strip, and to effect the release of the first hostages being held by Hamas in the area. Well, thank you, Shanna. We are taking a very quick break. We will be back with more news after this. this hour. Here is a live look at the Israel-Gaza border right now. Our correspondent in the area reports hearing what sounds like Israeli artillery fire continuing after the truce was due to begin, though it does appear to be winding down. It's 7:21, with 21 minutes into what was the scheduled start of this pause in fighting. The IDF says soldiers still inside Gaza will be stationed along established truce lines. Well, according to Qatar, which helped broker the deal, hostages held by Hamas will be released to the Red Cross in the coming hours. And Israel will in turn free Palestinian prisoners to the West Bank. Israel's military warning that there could be last-minute changes because of the very complicated nature of this deal. Well, the exchange of prisoners and hostages is a moment that hundreds of families have desperately been waiting for on both sides. They're holding on to hope their loved ones will be freed in the coming days, and they are fighting for each and every one of them to be returned safely. CNN's Oren Lieberman reports.
After nearly 7 weeks of war, it is the storm before the calm. Final hours of fighting in Gaza ticking down until a pause in the conflict early Friday morning. 13 hostages, women and children, will then be freed by Hamas on Friday afternoon, transferred to the Red Cross, and then back to Israel.
We are waiting on a day-by-day basis to wait for a phone call to see if our loved ones are coming back.
Under the agreement, the pause in the fighting is scheduled to last 4 days. A total of 50 Israeli women and children will be released in stages in exchange for 150 Palestinian women and children held in Israeli prisons. The spokesperson for Qatar's foreign ministry expressed hope that the deal could be the basis for a longer pause.
We are hoping that these 4 days would work as a proof of concept for further de-escalation measures, including extending this humanitarian pause, but also getting to a more sustainable truce.
Nearly 80% of Gaza's population is displaced, facing critical shortages of food, water, and fuel. These trucks will provide only a fraction of what's required. For Gazans, the pause in fighting is a brief respite after weeks of relentless Israeli bombardment. As of Tuesday, more than 12,700 Palestinians have been killed in Gaza, based on numbers from the Hamas-controlled Ministry of Health, which have not been officially updated because of a breakdown in communications. On Thursday, Israel detained Dr. Muhammad Abu Salmiya, the director of Al-Shifa Hospital. The IDF says he was questioned about alleged Hamas activity at the hospital. The IDF released footage of additional tunnels they say were uncovered below Gaza's largest medical facility. Health officials in Gaza have consistently denied Hamas used the hospital for military purposes. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, in a meeting with the new UK Foreign Minister David Cameron, said the pause in fighting is not the end of the war.
We'll continue with our war aims, namely to eradicate Hamas, because Hamas has already promised that they will do this again and again and again.
The Prime Minister's office said in a statement that it had notified the families of the first 13 hostages to be released. Gil Dickman says he's holding his breath, even though his loved ones are not in that initial group.
And I'm actually myself very excited to hear about the kids that are coming home and the hostages that are coming home. And but after saying that, I can't really believe anything until I see them free and home.
Oren Lieberman, CNN in Tel Aviv.
I'm Becky Anderson in Doha in Qatar. Our coverage from Israel continues after a short break. Coming up, we'll take you live to southern Israel as we monitor the expected truce between Israel and Hamas. Stay with us. Well, a 4-day truce between Israel and Hamas was due to go into effect at the top of this hour. Israel says it has informed the families of the first group of hostages to be freed later on Friday. This deal also calls for the release of Palestinian prisoners into the West Bank. But first, we expect to see a convoy of aid trucks begin making their way into Gaza from the Egyptian border. A stretch of land liberated. Qatari official conceded it's not nearly enough aid, but at least there's a pause in the fighting that might be extended.
It would be a fraction of the need in Gaza. The need is so great in Gaza that no matter how much aid you are going to bring in, there will be certainly more need for aid. But we are hoping to bring in as much as possible within the confines of the deal. And of course, our aim is for this deal to end with a lasting truce.
Well, the deal is for this truce to end with a sustained ceasefire. Ultimately, that is the Qatari sort of hope here. But in the beginning, let's start with the baby steps, as it were. This is a 4-day truce scheduled to begin at 7 a.m. local time. Let's bring in CNN's Jeremy Diamond live this hour in Sderot, Israel. It's just past the bottom of the hour, just past 7:30. Jeremy, what can you tell us?
Well, Becky, we are about a half hour into this scheduled truce between Israel and Hamas, but we are really only 10, maybe 15 minutes into not actually hearing hostilities still coming from inside of Gaza. In the first 15 minutes of this anticipated truce between Israel and Hamas, we were still hearing loud booms consistent with heavy weaponry inside of Gaza. And about 15 minutes into that truce, we also received incoming rocket sirens in southern Israel, in the kibbutzes of Kisufim and Ein HaShlosha, which are right along the border with Gaza. Now, we don't know whether there were any impacts or interceptions as a result of those sirens, but clearly in the first 15 minutes of this truce, we were hearing ongoing hostilities between the warring parties. Now, I've reached out to the Israeli military for comment to see whether or not they fired any munitions in those 15 minutes. They have yet to get back to me. For now, though, Becky, we are still seeing some smoke in the distance from previous strikes that happened earlier this morning, but we are not hearing any small arms fire. We are not hearing any artillery. Things appear to have calmed down, at least for the moment. The question now is whether that will hold.
Yeah, let's just remind viewers, from your vantage point over the past, 6.5 weeks or so, what have you been witnessing?
Yeah, for weeks now, we've been witnessing, all of the major military activity in the northern part of the Gaza Strip. And in fact, overnight was one of the most intense nights that we have seen in several days, at least. We saw heavy Israeli bombardments of parts of northern Gaza, active fighting, small arms fire, machine gun fire. This was a very, very busy night before this anticipated truce actually kicked in. Yeah.
Yeah, Jeremy, thank you. Jeremy Diamond is in Sderot, Israel. Well, Dan O'Shea is the former coordinator of the hostage working group at the U.S. Embassy in Baghdad. He's also a former U.S. Navy SEAL commander, joining me now on what is, Dan, a really important, this is a significant day. It is the day that the guns are expected to go silent, according to this deal that has been negotiated by a Qatar-led mediation team, and the day that we ought to see, or we are scheduled at least to see, the first of those hostages held by Hamas released. How did that mediation team get us to where we are now? They certainly have described what the last 45 days has been like as intense, extremely complicated, complex, at times. Just take us through what you believe they will have been through.
Well, bottom line is the negotiations to get these hostages back began almost immediately. So 47 days to get a resolution speaks to the level of that complexity, because Hamas and Israel did not sit across a table from each other. They both have sworn to wipe each other out, which the level of distrust. I mean, the fact that the ceasefire did not go into effect at 0700 as a local time, as was the plan, says everything about the level of how fragile this truce will be. And the ceasefire could end over something as simple as a skittish IDF soldier at a checkpoint, if a car's coming, approaches it too quickly, taking a shot at the vehicle, if a missile comes out of the West Bank from Hezbollah. So this is a very challenging situation going forward, but it's a day that many sides have been demanding, especially the families of the loved ones in Israel, because only by tremendous pressure on Netanyahu, by not only these families, but also the world community. 30 plus international hostages are being held in the 240 in Gaza. So there was tremendous pressure to make this happen, but it will be a challenge going forward for all the complexities involved.
You're right to point out that there is absolutely no trust between these two parties. I mean, the mediation team here in Qatar has made that very clear to me and has said that that makes it even more difficult. They have real experience here in Qatar of mediation through Afghanistan, through Iran, the US, Sudan, and normally they say they can find something to bring parties sort of to coalesce around. That has been impossible on this occasion. For that reason, Dan, they've built in certain obligations for both sides every day and have made it absolutely clear to both sides, to Israel and to Hamas, what those obligations are. Can you just take us through what we understand this deal to include, and what you make of this deal, given that you've been, you've got such experience in hostage negotiation?
Well, two things that I do know, and I'm not privy to all the details of what was actually negotiated, but what has come to light is the fact that the Red Cross and Red Crescent will be able to visit the hostages within Gaza. Conversely, the concern and fear Hamas would have is that obviously then it could get released where the remaining hostages are held. But also, I've been told that drones will not be able to fly during certain hours, presumably during daylight. So that's just part of the level of distrust these two sides have. And that's just two examples of how complex and how fragile this truce between two sworn enemies is. And we can just hope and pray that it does last for 4 days, and there is a transfer of both the hostages on one side and the Palestinian prisoners on the others. Because if it does go smoothly, this will be a blueprint for going forward on getting more hostages released.
Yeah, and you make a very good point. I just want to be absolutely clear on what we do know and what we don't know. We were expecting in this deal to hear detail of whether the ICRC could actually visit those hostages who are still held after day one, for example. Day one, we get to hopefully see the successful release of 13 women and children from Hamas, and on the reciprocal basis, we are expecting to see 13 Palestinian prisoners released. And the hope was that the ICRC would be able to would be given the opportunity to get around and meet those other hostages. That is actually not clear, and we did press the foreign ministry spokesman here in Qatar on that detail yesterday. He wasn't able to provide any further detail, but you've made some really good points there. This level of mistrust or distrust between these two sides is such that any misstep at this point will clearly put this entire deal in jeopardy. We're looking at a 4-day window here. Dan O'Shea, thank you very much indeed. It's a 4-day window in the first instance, folks. After that, for every 10 hostages that Hamas says it can release, the deal has baked in the opportunity for an extra day's worth of pause. That is an incentive. More to come after this quick break. Well, Israel and Hamas may have agreed to a truce for now, but Israel was very active on Thursday against Hezbollah in neighboring Lebanon. CNN's Ben Wiedemann is in Beirut and filed this report.
The Lebanese-Israeli border saw some of its most intense exchanges of fire Thursday between Israel and Hezbollah, a day after an Israeli strike killed 5 Hezbollah fighters, including the son of the leader of Hezbollah's parliamentary bloc. According to Lebanon's official news agency, there were almost 24 individual strikes by Hezbollah on Israel, mostly focusing on military targets. The group claimed it fired 48 Katyusha rockets on the Israeli infantry base at Ain Zaitim, and also claimed it killed 4 Israeli soldiers in a separate attack. Israel has yet to comment. The Israeli military, for its part, said it launched multiple air and artillery strikes on what it called Hezbollah's infrastructure and rocket launch sites. Thursday, Iranian Foreign Minister Hossein Abdollahian, on a 2-day visit to Lebanon, met with Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah to consult on efforts to end the war in Gaza. During his time in Beirut, the foreign minister, interviewed on the Mayadeen satellite news channel, warned that if the truce in Gaza doesn't hold, the scope of the war will expand. While Al Jazeera Arabic, citing a Hezbollah source, said the group would hold its fire during the 4-day truce if Israel does the same. I'm Ben Wiedemann, CNN, reporting from Beirut.
Civilians in Gaza have been struggling to survive as the war intensified, of course. One young blogger's video diary has documented the struggles and tragedies that people there have endured in the enclave amid the conflict. CNN's Jemana Karache has that report for you.
Life before the wars felt like a distant memory for video blogger Ayat Khadoura. They were the days when she'd smile in her videos, taking her followers behind the scenes of her work in Gaza. For weeks now, her posts have been about life at a time of war.
We now wake up at 5 a.m. to queue for bread. We now walk more than 6 kilometers to fill up a gallon of salty or fresh water. We charge our phones on the streets using the solar power we can find. We crave our favorite foods, but there's no power, no gas or water, so we have to make do with canned foods.
Ayat showed people how Gazans survive, neighbors sharing the little they have to bake bread in clay ovens. And at times, it was about how close death felt as bombs rained down on Gaza.
This might be my last video. They dropped leaflets asking people to evacuate the area. Most people fled. People were running in the streets like crazy, not knowing where to go. The situation is terrifying. God have mercy on us.
As the war intensified in the north, Ayat didn't leave. The safety they were told to evacuate to in the south was an illusion. Nowhere in Gaza is safe, she said.
Death and destruction is everywhere in Gaza. The occupation has no mercy on anyone, not the elderly, not the children, not the women, no one. All civilians are under fire in Gaza. Where are the decision makers? Where's the world? Gaza is being annihilated. We are dying. Someone do something. Enough.
But these desperate cries of so many like Ayat haven't stopped this seemingly endless nightmare for the people of Gaza, where burying their dead has become their everyday, where every moment feels like it may be their last. On Monday, it was Ayat's, killed along with other family members in a night of intense bombardment of Beit Lahia. Her last video, the haunting words of a 27-year-old with a final message from Gaza to the world.
We're humans like everyone else. We had big dreams. Now our dream is, if we are killed, we are a body in one piece, so we can be identified, buried in a grave, not body parts in a bag. When will this war end? Who will remain to tell people what happened to us, what we lived through, what we've witnessed?
Jemana Karachi, CNN, London.